everyone. Today we are going to talk about utilitarianism, a theory that you might all have heard of. And what is a class in ethics, or what is a session in ethics without a story to start with, or richly embedded with stories, right? So, let me start today with not a story, but a real life situation where we can bring out the theory here. Let us say then dams. Now, in India, dams long back had been regarded as the as a savior of the people, right? Damming a river. When you dam a river, when you build a dam on a river, you solve certain problems. What do you solve? Well, you bring about irrigation to a lot of area. You bring drinking water, potable water supply to a lot of areas. You enhance the spread of the river. You spread it across the year, because when you dam a river, you hold on to the water, and even in the dry season there is a significant amount of water left, definitely more than what would have usually been left if the flow of water would be fine, right. So, dams at one time in India seem to be, and I am sure this is true for any country of the world, seem to be a solution to a lot of problems. It was a miracle of science. It was something that took away the fundamental troubles that affected societies and countries, like droughts, like erratic water supply, insufficient water supply, taking water to places which are dry lands. So, it almost changes the topography of the land for better. Now, till now the description of a dam is of a savior, right. Now, what happens when a river is dammed? A river is dammed generally in a gorge or a place where there is water, and the moment the river is dammed, the river spreads before the dam and it submerges a lot of land which was on the banks of the river, right. So, I am sure you would know that if this is the river and we build a dam here, these areas, lands that are around, if this is the river and this is the direction of flow, this is where the dam is created, and these areas will be submerged, right. Just as good as a philosopher can sketch out a topographical diagram, here it is for you. Now, when these areas get submerged, what happens there? The vegetation is lost, they all go underwater, villages go underwater, right. So, they are given a compensation, generally how it has played out in India, especially in all the major dams. The people out here are relocated to other parts. They are given lands in other parts, adjoining parts or different parts. They are given monetary compensation, and so that when the dam is complete and the river rises and these areas are submerged, so no life is lost and there is a resettlement of these people there. Now, let us look at the third option, or the third point in the story. Now, these people who are relocated, they have been probably staying here for ages and for centuries, and if somebody wishes, or some village wishes not to be relocated, what should we be doing? What should we as society, as government, as a nation, as a parliament, what should we be doing, right? Let me attach some numbers to it so that it gives you a scale, right. So, here is a say a 5,000 people who are relocated, and this dam benefits directly or indirectly 100,000 people, maybe even more. Directly say 100,000 people, indirectly even more, because you can look at hydroelectric power, you can look at extended irrigation and their consequences, effects that can have of damming a river, right. And I am still not taking into the ecological problems that are coming into the picture, right, because these are also species that will go underground, underwater, and will, of course, we take care so that as much as little damage as possible and as much relocation as possible takes place, right. But let us put it in the human denominator today. So, we have 5,000 people here who have to be relocated and 100,000 people who are directly benefited by this dam, right. And these 5,000 people, say 1,000 of them or even 5,000 of them, do not want to relocate. They do not want to leave their ancestral land or their village at whatever price. They do not want to relocate and leave, right. This is a scenario that plays out in various fields, be it mines, be it different types of minerals, mining, land acquisition for manufacturing, especially in populated countries. This is quite possible. It's a scenario that plays out in many places, right, and there can be many modern day versions of it also. Not that this is a very old version, because this also still goes through. So, we must have heard of Narmada Bachao Andolan and various movements that come across the building of dams in various parts of the country. Now, half a century back, building a dam in India was a breeze. People, it was a no brainer, it was a clear consensus. But today, or even a decade or two back onwards, it is difficult to build dams, and the ecological disbalance is one of the problems, but the other problem is the rights of people. So, these 5,000 people who are to be relocated, if they do not wish to be relocated, can they be sacrificed for these 100,000 people, right? Can their wishes, can their autonomy, can their choices be sacrificed for the flourishing or the welfare of these 100,000 people? If your answer is yes to this, then this is you are taking a utilitarian strain. If your answer is no to this, then you are taking a deontological strain. Utilitarianism is a part of consequentialism. And in consequentialism, as we had discussed, it is a theory bereft of content. Utilitarianism provides it that content. And what is that content? That content is utility, right, loosely translated into happiness. So, what is the utility? The utility of these 5,000 people versus the utility of these 100,000 people, right. Can we make a comparison between this? As a utilitarian, yes, we can make a comparison. As a deontologist or as a non-consequentialist, we cannot make a comparison owing assigning weightage only to the sheer number of people, right. So, this is basically the debate that comes around the notion the utilitarian theory of ethics, right. So, when we look at, can the 5,000 people who are to be relocated be sacrificed in that sense for the well-being of the 100,000 people? Sacrificed in the sense, it is not a threat to their life, but it is a change in their livelihood, in their habitat, which they do not desire. They are being, or let us assume they are being forcibly relocated. Now, here is what utilitarianism stands as a theory, that anything that brings about the maximum happiness to the maximum number of people becomes the guide to the action, right. So, let me read out what is utilitarian from the Cambridge Dictionary of Philosophy. The moral theory that an action is morally right if and only if it produces at least as much good or utility for all people affected by the action as any alternative action the person could do instead, right. So, simplistically put, any action, how do you judge an action right as right or wrong, as desirable or undesirable? On the moral component, you judge it on the basis of how much happiness does it create to how many people, the greatest happiness of the greatest number. that as the guiding principle is the philosophy of utilitarianism as an ethical theory, that anything or to decide what is right or wrong or what is the direction to be taken or not, the greatest happiness for the greatest number is the guiding principle, and that is what is the core or the theory of utilitarianism. J.S. Mill and James Bentham, these are two proponents who are frequently associated with the foundations of utilitarianism, and J.S. Mill articulated it as the greatest happiness principle, or which is also called the principle of utility. Right. Okay. So, now we have some idea about utilitarianism. So, what is utility? Utility as happiness, and that brings the maximum utility to the maximum number of people as the core of utilitarianism. Right. Now, let us proceed to say how is utilitarianism connected with hedonism. Early utilitarians held variations of hedonism, but the important thing that you should note is that utilitarianism can be seen into two parts. It is a consequentialist principle because it looks at consequences, what are the effects of the decision, and the nature of those effects follow the hedonic aspect or the hedonism aspect, that it brings about the maximum utility. Right. Again, as we talked about, as we spoke about in the earlier versions, that when we talked about hedonism, that the pleasure itself can be a very porous term, a very vague term, or a very wide term that needs to be defined. And as usual, we are encountering, as usual, utilitarianism divides into various schools depending on how people have defined or understood utility. Right. So, we are engaging with utilitarianism as an introductory ethical theory, but these are robust big theories which are sophisticated and developed when one looks at how one arrives at the definition of utility, what one holds at as utility. Right. Just as we had seen that pleasure in case of hedonism can be defined in or can be understood or articulated in different ways, and depending on how it is articulated, the theory stands as refined or crude or initial or whatever name it is called for. Right. So, let us say here I would like to bring that, well, Bentham as an utilitarian, right. James Bentham as a philosopher and a utilitarian has gone ahead and tried to develop the theory of utilitarianism by bringing out something called the felicific calculus. What is the felicific calculus? I read: the alleged possibility of computing the value of units of happiness associated with the is associated with the utilitarianism of Bentham. Right. So, let me go back. Yes. So, imagine now, this may seem fancy, this may seem impractical, this may seem strange, but if you look at it this way, and particularly if you look at nations, states and governments, democratic governments, they are generally utilitarians. Now, how does a democratic government decide on what is the right thing to do? Right. So, Bentham has gone ahead and proposed a felicific calculus that we can actually go ahead and try to calculate the units of happiness that come from one kind of act and the units of happiness that could come from another kind of act. It is not as impractical or as strange as it sounds, because when one has to take macro decisions, right, whether we dam river X or we dam river Y, whether we invest in defense or whether we invest in space research. So, how does one take these decisions? Now, one way is to have an intuitive or a subjective understanding of, well, what is valuable than the other. The utilitarians have gone ahead and tried to make a very numerical, quantitative procedure by which one can calculate the units of happiness. So, they go ahead and make their assumptions that how many people it affects, and if each person is given 1 unit of utility, then one gets to calculate the utility here. Now, that seems strange, and this is quite an old way of looking at things, but nevertheless this is the first step that utilitarians took, right. So, the philosophic calculus was an attempt to calculate the utility from 2 competing acts, and then deciding on which particular decision or which particular act should be pursued, right. This particularly makes sense in the realm of macro decisions, in the realm of governments, in the realm of collectives, institutions, companies, but also when individuals take a decision, right. When you look at what is a decision that can bring maximum utility to you. So, when it is for an individual, well, utilitarianism and its description of hedonic component coincide, and it becomes a hedonistic principle in any case. But especially utilitarianism holds when the number of people affected are large. Once there is a large number of people affected, then utilitarianism comes into play. So, let me read out: utilitarianism as a universal teleological principle that calls for the maximization of goodness in society, or put in another way, the goodness of the greatest number, right. So, if I put in here, it is a principle, and what is teleology? That is teleology can be understood as purpose, and you need to understand it as the same thing as consequentialism, right. Teleology is purpose, and it is same as consequentialism. So, the teleology of a system is what is the purpose towards which it is designed. This originates from the word telos, which means purpose, right. Teleology is also seen as a contrast to deontology. So, teleology and consequentialism you may consider as the same kinds of orientation of moral theories. So, utilitarianism as a universal teleological principle. What is universal about it? Universal because it concerns a large bulk of people. A universal teleological principle that calls for the maximization of goodness in society. Society is crucial here. So, it is a social principle, or in put another way, it is the greatest goodness for the greatest number. Now, let me think of it, or let me introduce an example frequently given in utilitarian literature. Another story that will help you understand your position, help you understand utilitarianism per se. 2 people are in a raft from a shipwreck, and they are floating in the sea, and they are waiting to be rescued, and they are without food, and then they discover that there is some provisions left, but those provisions or that food that left will only be sufficient for one of the 2 people, right. Now, how do they decide who is the one who will survive, or who will consume the food and have a better chance of survival by being rescued, right. It is a skewed situation, it is hopefully does not occur to anybody and rarely does occur, but in case it occurs, it is nevertheless a situation. But more important than the reality of the situation, it is the way we think about the situation helps us understand our position or our theory on that particular situation. So, now here is the theory that we have a raft with 2 people, a raft out there in the sea, which is from a shipwreck, and now 2 people who are surviving on a raft waiting to be rescued, and there is provisions only for one to survive, right. Now, if one of them is a scientist and in mind has the potential cure for cancer, whereas the other person is a rather undistinguished person, and therefore, within them, or they need to decide, or you need to decide, or how does one decide whether the food should be divided equally, or who should be using the provisions, whether it should be sacrificed for the scientist or the undistinguished person, or they do a toss, or they split it, or they fight it out. How is this to be sorted, or what is a fair principle of sorting this will determine what kind of a theory one holds as an evidence of, or an instance of fairness. So, to the utilitarian, it is a clear answer. To the utilitarian, the answer is, as many of you might have guessed, the scientist who is shipwrecked in the raft deserves or should be taking the provisions to better his chance or her chance of survival over the other person, because the scientist has a possible cure for cancer, which can in effect affect a lot of people around, and therefore, the maximization of utility comes from the survival, or the possibility of the maximization of maximization of the utility for maximum number comes from betting on the survival of the scientist rather than the other rather undistinguished person, right. But if some of you feel that that is a kind of unfair or even a cruel way to take a decision, well, then your intuitions are more deontological, or definitely not utilitarian or anti-utilitarian, because utilitarian very often comes in the form of a ruthless preference to the greatest happiness of the greatest number. And these are cruel decisions that societies, governments, states, families have to take, right. So, if you can, I am sure you can think of many other examples in the times of partition, when families had to take decisions on who to survive, who will move, who will not move. These are all times when which are not just traumatic times, but also times where decisions have to be taken, and very often they are taken on utilitarian means, right. So, imagine a fighter jet which has got fire and has to crash land. Now, that fighter jet will choose has to crash land on villages that are down below, and then the pilot will have to choose, or may have been instructed to choose, the place where the least population exists. But in that sense, isn't the least populated village being punished for being the least populated, right? That somewhere the utilitarian methodology of decision making is being unfair to the minority, that well, because they are a less populated village, therefore, the pilot seeks to crash land on that particular village. So, there are numerous examples that you can think of, especially macro decisions that when one has to make here there is a clear contrast between utility and the notion of rights, right. Because utilitarianism can also shrink into majoritarianism, or can turn into majoritarianism without the notion of rights. So, the notion of rights are important to protect the minority, that even though this is a village of 5,000 people, they have rights to their land and cannot be relocated. So, you can look at the notion of human rights. Human rights are also against the ethos of utilitarianism very easily, but we will see how even that can be accommodated in the notion of utility. So, one question that occurs is that is utility the same across individuals, or does it vary? So, one assumption of utilitarianism is that citizen A's happiness, first citizen's happiness, second citizen's happiness, third citizen's happiness, or utility of citizen A, citizen B, citizen C are all the same. But that is that the case, because agency also varies. Now, some people have higher faculties of and a higher demand for being satisfied, some people are being easily satisfied. So, how do you actually look at can you normalize and consider each individual person's utility same as the other utility? It is not an answer that I am giving you, but it is a question I am leaving you with to think over it and to perhaps even comment or write on it. There can be so many examples. Another example that occurs to me, that well, a patient in a terminal state of illness can forcibly have his or her organs harvested to maybe help 4 or 5 people who require those organs to come back to life. It sounds like a cruel example, but these are difficult choices that have to be made. And when it is a utilitarian principle on way, say a wartime medic, a wartime doctor has to make a choice that, well, there is tremendous demand, people are getting wounded, soldiers are getting wounded and coming to the hospital, and the doctor cannot pay equal attention to all of them. So, the doctor has to make a choice on whom will that attention be. I am sure they will have their own guidelines which are thought through, and some of them might be downright utilitarian, that who has the highest chance of survival, who has the least consumption of medical supplies required. So, they have their algorithm to take these decisions and not making them decisions to be taken on an instant, but the principle being ingrained so that the decision to be taken on the instant becomes easier. And that is the importance of moral theorizing, that the more you theorize in peace, the more clear your principles are, and therefore, you can take a decision in the time of need without contemplating at the moment where decision needs to be taken. So, finally, let us just sum up by coming across 2 kinds of utilitarianism that you must be aware of: act and rule utilitarianism. This is similar to the act and rule consequentialism. Let me read out. Act utilitarians say that we ought ideally to apply the principle to all of the alternatives open to us at any given moment. What does this mean? That there are no need to just stick to rules, but we need to apply the principle to all alternatives open to us. That means, to evaluate actions, to evaluate acts which are available to us, and to look at the consequences that each act will bring about, the highest utility that each act will give about at any moment, and then decide on the action. This will be even clearer when we look at what is rule utilitarians. Rule utilitarians, on the other hand, state that an act is right if it conforms to a valid rule within a system of rules that, if followed, will result in the best possible state of affairs. Here again, it is close to a non-consequentialism, because it looks at an act is right if it conforms to a valid rule. What is a valid rule? A valid rule within a system of rules is that which brings about the best possible state of affairs. So, for instance, as we talked about in hedonism, if we look at truth telling, truth telling is important, or promise keeping is important, or breaking a contract is punishable as a rule, is because keeping one's contract, keeping one's commitments brings one back to keeps the system stable, keeps the overall system stable. People can believe and work with each other only if people keep their contracts, and if they do not keep their contracts, they are liable to be punished. So, a rule of contract keeping or promise keeping is to be followed to result in the best possible state of affairs, right. And the readings here are Poemen and Pfizer's Ethical Theory, Classical and Contemporary Reading. So, if you get your if you could read these particular pages, a brilliant introduction to utilitarianism that will clear your understanding of utilitarianism. So, by now you should be able to define what utilitarianism is. You should be able to, as is the grain of the course, look at situations, policies, laws, decisions, and abstract what is the moral theory being followed. So, you should be able to see a decision, or once you experience a situation or see a decision, you can abstract what is the moral theory being followed. Thank you.